Those are some amazing places, and I think probably, Patrick, they've given us some vacation ideas. Were you surprised at some of the places that people pointed out on social media?
You know what was neat about those is there's this great mix. You know, there were the iconic and maybe the not so iconic, right? And there's the big, and then there was kind of the next door nature aspect of them. But I think the common theme that you see across all of them in those brief words up there was this absolute personal experience with one of those places and something wild about them. I talked to my mom. I said, "Mom, what's your favorite wild place?" She said Point Pelee, because she visited there during bird migration, and she had, you know, the chickadee come and feed out of her hand. And that moment in time when that little bird that weighs, you know, 5 ounces, 6 ounces, 7 ounces, or grams, I'm sorry, is landing on your hand, is that intimate experience. So I think that's what's fascinating to me about all those places around the Great Lakes. We have a few more minutes with our guests here, and I think, John, you brought up a really interesting point there, is about kind of when to intervene and when not to intervene, when to make a step towards management. And I don't want to, all these places are touched by the hands of people in some way or another, whether it's atmospheric deposition of some pollutants or anything. But I think you two, Marian and Phyllis, have faced some major controversies at both the places you work. One with cormorants, which is an overabundant native species that's native to the area, but has a big impact on the health of landscape and fisheries. And another one here with climate change and moose and wolf interactions. One is very iconic, well studied, one of the most amazing stories in ecology that we have. So can you tell us a little bit about this controversy and how you've had to deal with it? You were an actual manager that had to face that.
That's right, and I would say that overall, going into the 21st century, that's one of the biggest challenges for park and protected area managers, is that whole dynamics of when do you intervene, when don't you intervene. And for us, it's about wild, but it's about healthy. And part of our jobs, of course, is researching and understanding how ecosystems work and what can go wrong when there aren't processes. So
you may have the cormorants who nest, and they might ruin the vegetation of an island and have an impact to the fisheries, but still, they're part of the system.
That's right. But for us, also too, we're in a part of the country where there's very little wild places left. So what we have is very precious. And so as a national park, we're obligated to intervene when we see that there's an unhealthy situation in an ecosystem. And we have the means by which to, even though it may be very controversial, the whole concept of culling, to reduce numbers and to control numbers. We have to grapple with that.
Right. And the same thing at Royale. We have the wolf-moose interaction. We have populations that fluctuate. We have climate change entering the scenario. Tell us a little bit about that current controversy.
If you track it all, you're aware that climate change has reduced the number of ice bridges, which is the way wolves would come to Isle Royale. And Isle Royale, actually, the studies that were done there they're in most biology textbooks on predator-prey relationships. So we've learned a tremendous amount about these two iconic species, and I think the research has helped wolves get reestablished across the country as they showed really how they interact with their prey. But at this point, the wolves are genetically, they're not getting enough new blood, if you will, into the system, and their numbers are way down, partly attributed to that and lack of ice bridges, so they can't get replenishment. And the moose numbers are continuing to kind of fluctuate, but they're also on an all-time low. So what we've been trying to figure out, and we're going to take we've taken the first step at, well, wolves have to eat something. Will the moose survive? And so the first round of climate change analysis said, well, under 3 out of 4 scenarios, they don't possibly last past 50 years. In one, they do. The moose don't last. And so there would follow the wolves, possibly. So, but they also say this is the most difficult place to do climate change predictions in the world. No, all the models are based on continents without 5 big lakes sitting in the center creating their own lake. So we've said, you know, if we're going to try to sort this out, we're going to use the best data, the latest data. And we're in the middle of, we'll be starting next year, an environmental assessment of that whole process and looking at if not moose, what's happening with caribou, because they're dropping off on the Canadian islands. There's an opportunity to really study island biogeography. That's our technical term for that. I can go geeky too, by the way.
Excellent.
Okay.
I'm all good.
And so people can engage on that issue and talk to us about what they think. You know, if a park is going to be an ark, what animals are invited on? And what will happen afterwards when you do that? Does it then become a continual source where you're managing? And we do manage with the capital W for wilderness at our Royal. It's a federally designated wilderness. It has a whole concept that it is a human construct. Nature just goes on its own, but we tend to try to, you know, define it.
So these are two big current controversies. When do we control cormorants? And culling is a nice way of saying when do we remove some of them. And a question of should we not intervene, reintroduce wolves or not introduce wolves, and then a whole climate change. Well, climate change is partially human caused, so therefore we should intervene. Well, there's all kinds of good discussions to have. John, it also was interesting to me when you pointed out that you set your watch aside, and again, I had the same reaction. I'm not sure anybody has a watch now to set aside because it's all on their phone or someplace else. But we're also, there's the pros and cons of that. I'm taking a trip with my family soon. And should we leave the electronics behind or should we take them with them? Because if we take them with them, we have all kinds of cool apps to learn about the places right hand and face. But it's nice to get disconnected sometimes too, and it's a breather. How are we going to deal with that kind of connection or disconnection in the future at these places?
That's a big controversy in the Park Service. But I also remember I went to the Galapagos Island and I took the Journey of the Beagle by Darwin with me. So for your young kid, that's no different from him taking his phone with the apps and me hauling a thick book along. So I think, but
can you tell them that for me just afterwards?
Okay, but so the question though comes to technology requires infrastructure, which requires a whole impact to a park or a wild place. And what level do you want to introduce that? So it is a big controversy.
But it is a necessary thing because we need people to enjoy these places, to love these places. So we have to connect.
Yeah. Well, you've given us a lot to think about today and a lot to talk about. So I guess, Patrick, as we head towards the end and wrap up, what are some of your final thoughts that we should be taking with us about these wild places around the Great Lakes Basin?
You know, again, what's fascinating to me is you travel around the Great Lakes, and all these places are almost a day's drive, maybe a little bit more, and you go from these really endangered oak savannas and these beaches and these dunes, and you travel through all these transitions to the great forest, to these Great Lakes and these great coasts. It's all just kind of right there, and you can, again, find that anywhere in your backyard to a very far away place. We're lucky, and I feel proud to know that these places exist, and I feel comforted to know they exist. And again, I invite people always, you got to get outside. You got to take that walk outside, and you can visit both electronically by visiting places like nature.org/wildplaces or Great Lakes Now, but you got to go see.
All right. Thanks so much, Patrick. And that is going to do it for Great Lakes Now Connect. Thanks so much to Patrick Doran, of course, all of our special guests, and a big thanks to our audience here at Detroit Public Television. We hope that you've enjoyed exploring the wild places of the Great Lakes with us today. They are beautiful. They are unique and wonderful places to visit, but they're also integral to the health of our Great Lakes Basin and to the wildlife that thrive there. We hope today's show has inspired you not only to find out more, but to get involved in protecting these treasured wild places of the Great Lakes. To learn more, just go to our website, greatlakesnow.org. All of the information will be there for you. Plus, you can share this show with your friends. And thanks also to our partners at the Nature Conservancy of Michigan for all of their hard work. I'm Christy McDonald. We will see you next time on Great Lakes Now Connect. Take care.